The candles on my mother's birthday cake are still smoking when my aunt slides the envelope across the table to me. I stare at it. My name is written on the front in her neat, looping handwriting. Tess. Like it's a birthday card. Like it's something nice. It is not something nice. Inside is a printed spreadsheet, 2 columns, dates going back 4 years, numbers in the second column, at the bottom a total highlighted in yellow, $38,450. We just thought it was time to settle up, my aunt says. She picks up her fork and cuts into her slice of cake. Since you're doing so well at the firm now. My cousin, her daughter, Kelsey, is looking at her phone. My uncle is refilling his wine glass. My mother is smiling at me with this soft, patient expression, like she's waiting for me to understand something obvious. I look back down at the spreadsheet. 4 years of loans, groceries, rent gaps, car repairs. The time my aunt's basement flooded. The time my cousin needed first and last month's deposit for her new apartment. My mother's dental work. Kelsey's laptop for nursing school. Christmas. Easter. My grandmother's funeral expenses, which I was told were temporary, just until the estate was sorted, which it apparently never was. $38,450. I set the envelope down on the table very carefully. Let me back up. I'm 31 years old. I'm a paralegal at a mid-size firm in Columbus. I make decent money, not lawyer money, not doing so well money, but enough to have my own apartment, a car that runs, a small savings account I've been building since I was 22. I'm not rich. I have never been rich. But I've been careful, and I've been consistent, and I've worked extremely hard for everything I have. My mother raised me and my younger brother after my father left when I was 9. We didn't have much. I understood that early. I started babysitting at 12, had a part-time job through all 4 years of high school, put myself through community college while working full-time at a hotel front desk. I know what it costs to build something from nothing. My aunt, my mother's sister, has always been what my grandmother used to call a little loose with money. Not mean about it, just the way things were. She and my uncle live in a nice house in Westerville, drive decent cars, take a vacation every other year. They're not struggling, but they've also never quite had enough somehow. There's always something. My cousin Kelsey is 26. She works part-time at a salon and has been talking about finishing nursing school for 3 years. For the record, I love my family. Or I loved the idea of my family. I believed in us. That's the thing nobody tells you about being exploited by people you love. You don't see it happening. You think you're just being a good daughter, a good niece, a good cousin. You think you're helping people through hard times and hard times end, and then things go back to normal. The first time my mother asked to borrow money, I was 26. She'd had an unexpected bill, some issue with her heat pump, and she was short $400. I had it. Of course I gave it to her. She's my mother. She paid it back actually. That time, the second time, I was 27. My aunt called, not my mother. Kelsey needed textbooks and scrubs for her nursing program. Could I help out? Just until her financial aid came through? $320? I said yes. The financial aid came through. The $320 did not. I didn't say anything. It felt small. Petty. She's family. Over the next 2 years, the requests came in steadily like water finding cracks. Never huge. Never so large that it felt like something to push back on. $150 here, $600 there. My uncle needed new tires and got paid at the end of the month. My mother's car registration. Kelsey's apartment deposit. A few months of my aunt's gym membership. I still don't fully understand how that one happened. Each time, someone said, "I'll pay you back." Each time I said, "Don't worry about it," because that felt like the right thing to say, because I wanted to be generous, because I was embarrassed to seem like I was counting. Here's the part I'm most ashamed of. I wasn't counting. I just kept saying yes, kept not mentioning the previous times, kept telling myself this was what family did for each other. I was 29 when I started the spreadsheet. It was actually my friend Dara who made me do it. We were at dinner and I mentioned, almost offhand, that I'd lent my mother $800 for her property taxes, and Dara just looked at me and said, Tess, how much have you given them total? I didn't know. I genuinely did not know. I went home that night and started going back through my bank statements. It took me 2.5 hours. When I saw the number, I sat with it for a long time. Just under $22,000 at that point in 3 years. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't know how. Instead, I just started saying no more often. I had something come up. I was saving for something. I couldn't right now. The request slowed a little but didn't stop, and I still said yes sometimes, because I hadn't figured out yet how to be the person who says no to her mother without the conversation turning into a 2-hour referendum on everything I owed her for raising me. My mother is not a villain. I want to say that clearly. She's a complicated person who has had a hard life and who has a genuinely distorted sense of what's normal in terms of money and family. She believes, I think actually believes, that my doing well means we all do well, and that keeping score is cold and unfamily-like. My aunt has no such complexity. My aunt knows exactly what she's doing. By the time I sat at that birthday dinner table staring at the spreadsheet, my own running total had reached $31,000. Their spreadsheet said $38,450 because they'd added interest, actual interest 4%, compounded annually on money I had given them as a gift, and because they'd included 3 loans I had no memory of whatsoever. A $1,200 line item from 2021 labeled home repair assistance that I did not recognize. A $900 line item from the same year labeled Kelsey Medical. A $650 town newsletter line item from early 2022, no label at all. I looked up from the spreadsheet and said, very quietly, "What is this?" My aunt smiled. "Just what we talked about." "We never talked about this." "Tess." My mother's voice, gentle and slightly warning. "We all just want to make things right." Kelsey was still on her phone. "This has interest on it," I said. "Well, money has value," my aunt said like she was explaining something to a child. "We want it to be fair." I thought about the $400 my mother paid back when I was 26. The only money anyone had ever returned to me. I thought about Dara's face at dinner that night, the way she'd set down her fork. I folded the spreadsheet in half, put it back in the envelope, and set it next to my untouched slice of cake. "I need to think about this," I said. I drove home. I did not cry in the car, which surprised me. I felt something colder than crying. Something that had been building for a long time and had finally found a shape. I called Dara. "Okay," she said when I'd finished explaining. "Do you want to feel better or do you want to actually do something?" I said I wanted to do something. "Then you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. All of it. Before you say another word to any of them." I spent the next 2 weeks pulling together every bank statement I had going back 5 years. I built my own spreadsheet. I tracked every transfer, every Venmo, every cash withdrawal I could tie to a family request. I noted what was said at the time, "I'll pay you back," versus "could you help with?" versus the ones where nothing was said at all and I just handed over money because the situation made me feel like I had to. And then I found the credit card. I almost missed it. I was going through my credit report, Dara's suggestion, just to see the full picture, and there was an account I didn't recognize. A store credit card. Opened 2 years ago. Balance of $1,840. Listed address, my aunt's house, my name, my social security number, my aunt's address. I sat in my apartment and I read that line on the screen 4 or 5 times. I know my aunt has my social security number. She asked for it 3 years ago when she said she was adding me to her auto insurance as an emergency contact, which I now understand is not a thing that requires your SSN, but which I did not know at the time. I called the card issuer. I explained the situation. They walked me through the dispute process and flagged the account for fraud investigation. They told me to file a police report, which I did the most clinical, terrifying 45 minutes of my life, sitting in a beige room describing my aunt's handwriting to an officer who typed everything without expression. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell anyone in my family. I kept going to work. I answered my mother's text normally. I made plans to have lunch with Kelsey the following week, which I kept. I sat across from my cousin at a sandwich place on Henderson and listened to her talk about a guy she'd been seeing, and I smiled and asked questions, and I felt like I was watching myself from a small distance. During that lunch, I said very casually, "Hey, do you know anything about a store card in my name?" I got some mail about it. Kelsey's eyes went just slightly still, just for a second. "That's weird," she said. "No idea." She knew. I drove home from that lunch and I sat in my car in my parking garage for 20 minutes. Here's what I understood. Finally, completely, this was not carelessness. This was not my aunt misunderstanding boundaries or my mother having a distorted view of family finances. The credit card was intentional. The spreadsheet with the fake loans and the invented interest was intentional. These people had looked at me, at the life I'd built carefully over years, and made a decision. I am not going to describe in detail what happened next, legally, because some of it is still ongoing. What I will say is that I hired a lawyer. Not a big expensive one. A sharp woman named Ms. Minns O'Coffer, who works mostly on the west side and who, when I showed her everything, said, "You have more here than you think." I sent my aunt a certified letter. I didn't write it myself. Ms. O'Coffer helped me, and it was extremely precise. It laid out the fraudulent account. It referenced the police report number. It gave her 30 days to contact the card issuer and resolve the balance, after which we would be proceeding with a formal fraud complaint. I did not send my mother anything. I called her. That conversation was the hardest thing I've done in my adult life, and I've done some hard things. My mother cried. She said she didn't know about the card. I'm still not entirely sure whether that's true. She said my aunt had just been trying to help the family. She said I was being cold. She said I would regret this. I said, "Mom, I need you to hear me. Not as your daughter asking for permission. I need you to hear me as an adult telling you what happened to her." There was a long silence. "I do hear you," she said finally, in a voice I hadn't heard from her before. "We didn't fix anything on that phone call. We haven't fixed anything yet." But that sentence landed somewhere, and I think we both felt it. My aunt contacted the card issuer within the 30 days. The account was closed. Miss O'Coffer advised me on what further action was available to me. I'm keeping those options open. I did not go to my grandmother's birthday dinner last month. My mother called and I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was careful and quiet, not accusatory, just saying she missed me and the door was open. I haven't called back yet. I'm not sure when I will. Here's what I know. I'm not angry the way I expected to be. The anger was there. It was enormous, actually, for about 3 weeks, and then something else moved in behind it. Clarity, maybe. Or just space. I had been taking a ceramics class on Tuesday nights. I started a travel savings fund, specifically for a trip to Portugal I've been talking about for 4 years, and always found some reason to delay. I sleep well. I come home at the end of the day, and my apartment is exactly the way I left it, and I owe no one an explanation. I'm not going to tell you I've figured out what to do about my mother. I haven't. She's still my mother, and that's not a math problem with a clean answer. What I will tell you is this. The $38,450 spreadsheet is still in my apartment, in a folder, in the bottom drawer of my desk. I keep it there because I want to remember what it felt like to hold it, not to stay angry. Just to remember that I looked at that piece of paper and didn't fall apart. I folded it in half and I drove home and I figured out what to do next. That's enough. I've thought a lot about the version of myself who sat at that birthday table and said, "I need to think about this instead of falling apart." That woman surprised me, because for a long time I would not have predicted she existed. Here's something I've come to understand. What happened to me wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was a slow one, built out of 100 small moments where I chose to look away. Every time I said, "Don't worry about it," I was teaching the people around me exactly what I was worth to them. Not because I was weak, because I was trying so hard to be good. And those two things, trying to be good and knowing your own value, can pull in opposite directions for years before you notice the distance between them. The $38,450 spreadsheet was not the beginning of the problem. It was just the moment the problem finally had a number on it. My aunt didn't change overnight. Kelsey didn't change. The dynamic that allowed a fraudulent credit card to get opened in my name didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew in the space I kept leaving open. The space I filled with, of course, and I've got it, and don't worry, I'm not saying any of this was my fault. I want to be clear about that. What my aunt did was wrong. Full stop. The credit card, the invented line items with compounded interest, the fake loans. Those were choices she made, and she made them knowing exactly what she was doing. There is no version of that story where I am the one who failed, but here is what I did learn, and what I think about now when I sit in my apartment on a Tuesday night after ceramics class, tired in the good way. Intelligence without honesty is just cleverness, and cleverness without courage is just performance. I was intelligent enough to build a careful life. I was not honest enough, with myself for a long time, to admit that the life I was building had a leak in it. The moment I sat down with my bank statements and actually looked, actually counted, that was the beginning of something. Not the revenge, not the lawyer, not the police report, just the act of looking. That took more courage than any of the steps that followed, because it meant I couldn't unknow what I was about to find out. What followed? Dara asking the right question, Ms. Okafor reading those documents with that calm, focused expression, the certified letter. The 30 days, none of that was glamorous. It was just work. Careful, consistent, unglamorous work. The same kind of work I'd been doing since I was 12 years old, babysitting in my neighborhood so I could have something that was mine. I think about my mother sometimes, that silence on the phone after I asked her to hear me as an adult. I don't know yet what comes next between us. I genuinely don't. But I know that what I said to her was true, and that I said it clearly, and that's something I couldn't have done 2 years ago. What you give your attention to, you build. What you refuse to look at, you allow. The choices that shaped my story, to finally count, to finally speak, to finally stop filling the silence with yes, those were not dramatic. They were just decisions made one at a time by someone who finally got tired of being the person who didn't ask. Portugal is in 7 months. I've already bought the flights.